In this video, we'll try to understand what is entity framework and why do we need them. Now, this is a theoretical video, so you won't see any kind of practical demonstrations in this video, but definitely this will help you to strengthen your base for entity framework. Let me define entity framework in one sentence. Entity framework is a ORM. ORM stands for Object Relational Mapping. So let's first try to understand this concept of ORM, and we will understand entity framework by itself. Now, in order to understand ORM, let's try to understand how layered and tiered architectures are used in software applications. Now, layered and tiered architectures are the favorite ways by which developers actually architect their software applications, right? So normally what developers do, they break their software applications into 3 layers, like the first layer is the user interface, the next layer is the middle tier, or probably you can say it as a model. After that we have the data access layer, and data access layer actually connects with your RDBMS, which can be SQL Server or Oracle. Now, in order to code this 3-layered architecture or this 3-tier architecture, developer has to do a lot of work, right? A lot of work means, for example, now let's say that you have a simple table called as TBL customer, which has customer code and customer name. Okay, so the first thing the developer will do, he will probably create a class in his data access layer called as customer DAL. Okay, and from this customer DAL he will actually go and fire a select statement saying select star from TBL customer, right? He has to write some SQL queries to get this data from this table. Now this data which is returned from this data access layer is probably returned in format like data set or data reader, or it is returned in some kind of enumeration, right? And this data set is then mapped to your middle tier or to your model classes by using some kind of a mapping logic. So for example, let's say that you are returning a customer data set, so you will say here ds.tables0.customer code, this value should be sent to obj.customer code of the model, right? So you will write some kind of a mapping code. Okay, and the final thing is your middle tier and model. There the developer has to go and create those classes, right? And definitely the user interface where he used to go and consume these objects. So you can see that developer has to do a lot of code, right? Or he has to do a lot of work here. He has to actually write a data access layer. He has to actually write the mapping logic. He has to actually go and create those models, those classes. So a lot of work is there for developers over here. Now, this work of creating the models, the data access layer, the mapping between the models and the data access layer, this work will increase with the number of tables getting increased, right? So for example, now let's say that if you have 50 master tables and 20 transaction tables, etc., right? So if you have 100 tables, then that means probably you will end up into hundreds of classes as data access layers. Probably you will end up into, assuming that there is 1:1 mapping, okay, you will end up into hundreds of models in your middle tier, and for mapping this data access layer to the model, then you have to write those many mapping logic. So this work actually becomes linear as the number of tables increase. So that's one part. The second part is, not only this task can become linear, but this task can also become complex. For example, let's say in your relational database you have a customer table which has a relationship with the address table. So probably you have a primary key and a foreign key relationship, right? So in your middle tier or in your model, you will probably land up, or you will translate that foreign key and primary key relationship to a aggregation and a composition relationship. So probably you will have a customer class, and inside the customer class you will have an address class, right? And also you need to write this mapping logic over here, which will translate this primary key and foreign key relationship of the relational database to the aggregation or probably composition or association relationship inside your middle tier or in your model. So there is a lot of work which the developers have to do here, and this work not only increases in quantity, but it also increases in terms of complexity. So if there are 100 tables, yes, you have to create hundreds of those classes and data access layer, but if you have a lot of those foreign keys and primary key relationship and those kind of things, then again the complexity also increases in terms of aggregation, composition and association code, right? So increase in amount of work as well as increase in amount of complexity. So it would be great, if we can give developers, some kind of an engine or some kind of framework, where the developers can say, okay, here is a customer table, which has a customer code and customer name field. Can you go ahead and create my data access layer? Can you go ahead and create my model? Can you auto create those mapping logic, to map the models with the data access layer? So ORM is a concept which will help you to auto generate your data access layer, your model, and the mapping between the data access layer and the model. And if you look at the full form of ORM, it says object relational mapping. Okay, so the object actually stands for model, the middle tier. The relational stands, for the layer which actually talks with your database, and the mapping stands for the logic which actually, connects the object and the relational layer, right? Now let's come back to Entity Framework. Entity Framework implements this ORM concept. In other words, Entity Framework helps you to automate data access layer, it helps you to automate model, and it helps you to automate the logic, which maps the model and the data access layer. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. So in this video we were trying to understand, or I'll say rather we were trying to define what exactly is Entity Framework and what exactly this ORM concept and how Entity Framework is related to ORM. Now in the next video we'll try to understand what are the different elements in Entity Framework. For example, we have the EDMX file, then we have 3 sections inside the EDMX file. We have the edmx.cs file, the behind code of the EDMX. We have context, we have entities, and lots of other things. So what we'll do is, in the next video, we'll go ahead and we'll create a very simple Entity Framework project, and we'll first try to understand all these elements inside Entity Framework, and then we will try to consume that object inside our UI. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. So in the next video, we'll talk about different elements inside Entity Framework. Thank you so much.